the veil was lifted. It was like there was no doubt in my mind after watching that this is exactly what I was going through. And from that day, I was like, I can't use steroids anymore.
You've been seeking answers from every dermatologist, doctor, and all over the internet, wondering what on earth this unbearable skin issue is. You know something's up, and you've been suffering and silenced for far too long. This podcast is going to bring awareness to the brutal reality that is topical steroid addiction and withdrawal syndrome. It will give you practical mental and physical tips to help you along your journey and provide you the strength you need to push through each day. You'll hear from real people battling this illness, as well as experts in the field, and I'm also going to share with you what's happening as I battle and conquer TSW. You are not alone, you're not crazy, and you will heal. If there's one thing I know, it's that anyone going through this hell is a warrior. My name is Jennifer Powers, and I welcome you to TSW Journey to Healing. All right, so we are here today with Melody. Melody, thank you so much for being here on this podcast and sharing your testimony with everyone.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a very important subject, and awareness is important.
Absolutely, and that's the whole goal. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm only a few months into my journey, and I know that you are recovered from it, but it's crazy how little information there really is out there. When I was searching high and low on the internet, in actual books, in podcasts, I was looking everywhere, and there was next to nothing other than the support group that we have, the ITSAN Facebook group, which has been a godsend. There's really nothing out there. Is that what you found as well?
When I started out, yes, actually, I had been in the addiction cycle for 10 years.
Oh my gosh.
Because I was on steroids for my asthma. I wasn't using topicals at that time. And every time they stopped the steroids, my skin would get angry. So I was like, why is this cycle happening to me? And doctors did not know. They all had different reasons. One said it's allergies. Another said you have poison ivy. Another said you have sun poisoning. Well, it wasn't in the sun. How is that possible? So each doctor gave me a different reason, but they all went back to steroids. And I couldn't find anything either. And then my daughter had done some research. She found it. She found it, Sam. And she started out saying, Mom, I think it's the steroids you're using. And I was like, yeah, but I've been using them pretty much my whole life. I was like, no, Erica, that can't be it. And I disregarded it.
Yeah.
And then she sent a video. And the video was Brianna, and she's the spokesperson for Preventable.
Mm-hmm.
And I cried. I cried right then and there because it so resonated that it was like, oh my God, I can't deny. It was like the veil was lifted. It was like there was no doubt in my mind after watching that this is exactly what I was going through. And from that day, I was like, I can't use steroids anymore. I can't use the creams because at that point they had added the creams. I can't use the prednisone anymore. And a couple of weeks in, it started flaring.
Yeah.
And I had gone over my other daughter's house, and I used a different purse than the one that had my steroid creams in it. And I was in so much agony that if I had that other purse, I would have used it. I sent her out to go get Dermaplast, go get Oragel, go get all different things to try that would just help with the pain, and nothing was working. But by the time I got home, I was like, no, if you've gone through it, even for this length of time, going back would be stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you, so you said the majority of your life, you were really using a lot of prednisone for your asthma. When did you have asthma? Ever since you were a child? And how did that impact your life?
From the time I was about 12 was when they started giving me the prednisone for it.
Wow. And see, that's
Uh,
crazy because I was also taking prednisone up for my eczema, on and off for years, but 12 years old. I mean, prednisone is, we both know it's a very heavy duty drug. It's super
yeah,
intense.
yeah.
Yeah.
But my asthma almost killed me so many times that
Oh gosh.
that's just, it was the lifesaver back then.
Yeah,
And
sure.
then it just, I don't know why, but it crossed the line back when I was in my 40s. And then it was as soon as I was done with the prednisone or on one of those packs that reduces, by a couple of days after I was no longer taking it, my skin would get inflamed.
Mm.
And then I'd go back to the doctors and be like, I'm suffering. And what I called the prednisone at that point, and I said it to all of them, it's the vacation from my skin.
Mm-hmm.
If I got into the shower when it was flaring, I would call, my skin was so angry, and I would be getting out of the shower crying because it hurt so bad. But nobody had answers as to why.
So difficult. So you started this withdrawal. I think you said April 2016. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so
I was 56 years old.
Okay. Okay. I mean, you know what? It's crazy because we're in that group and we've now connected with so many warriors that are going through this or have gone through this. And it's just amazing to me, teenagers all the way through 70, 80 plus years old. I mean, I find it to be, and you probably do as well, like it took so many years to figure out what this was, but thank God we figured out what it is so that we can get to the bottom of it. My heart goes out to all, and that's the reason for this podcast is there's so many people out there, I'm sure, that are beating their head against the wall going, why is this happening? And because so many doctors are so unaware of this or don't acknowledge this, there's people that can go their entire lives and never understand that they can recover from this. So you were 56, you started in April 2016. Talk to everybody about, what those first few months were like and how that journey went for you.
Okay. When I started, I was 2 weeks in for a doctor's appointment, and my arm was starting to flare. There was just a big, hand-sized flare on my arm. And I said to him, this is what I think it is. And I gave him the ITSAN paperwork. Mm-hmm. Now, normally my doctor was really good with listening to my suggestions because I was diagnosed with a rare genetic autoimmune, and I was the one who discovered it a couple of years before that. So I thought he would listen, and he looked at me and he laughed. And he said, you really think you're addicted to a cream?
Oh, wow.
Because it's called topical steroid withdrawal. I wish it was called corticosteroid withdrawal because it's not just topical. Topical is the most common, but it's not the only.
Yep.
So he laughed at me to start with. And then a couple weeks further in, I ended up with a tear in my cornea because my eyes were so dried out and so inflamed that itching them, I ended up with a scratched cornea. So I had gone to the urgent care. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I was starting to rash up, but I didn't look bad. And they treated my eye, but I had a follow-up appointment 2 weeks later, just 2 weeks later. And when the doctor walked into the room I was in, he looked at me and went, oh my God, what happened to you?
Oh gosh.
And I explained TSW to him because he was like, wow.
Yeah.
And I went to my doctor. My doctor didn't know what to think about it. He sent me to the emergency room. Go to the emergency room. So I went there and I looked like a burn victim. Literally, my skin was that red. It was 80% of my body. I had the typical red sleeves, only deep, deep, deep red. And I was crying because you can't stop crying when you're in the major part of it.
Yep.
And they handed me Silvadine cream, and they were like, we really don't know what to do for you. So they set me up an emergency appointment with a dermatologist, and that, they were like, I don't know, So the dermatologist's office, they called in the head guy, and I told him about my Jobs, which is my autoimmune, and I told him about TSW. He did a biopsy on my arm.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I want you to cut a piece of my arm off so that we can,
Right.
you know?
Right. Yeah.
But even that, it's related to eczema or dermatitis is what the biopsy
Yep.
came back as. And he didn't know what to do for it either. And he didn't really believe in TSW.
Yep.
But he was interested in the Jobs because he thought that was it. So he actually asked me if I would be willing to speak at one of his things where he was training other residents.
Wow.
And I said, only if you let me explain that this condition right now is TSW. And he withdrew the offer.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
See, isn't that
because
something? Right? Because
he didn't believe in it.
Right. Right. Oh my gosh. It's
so that
such,
was very, it was very depressing to not have that kind of help.
Absolutely. I mean, who else are we supposed to turn to, right? Like, we know we are not the medical professionals, and we seek them for expert advice and for that support and that help. It's upsetting. And even in my own process throughout this journey, you can't help but wonder if it's that they don't want to acknowledge it because pharmaceuticals are a huge thing that they push, or they don't want to acknowledge it maybe because there's some guilt there. Not saying that's their fault, but when you have lack of knowledge on something and there hasn't been a lot of medical studies done on this, it's not necessarily their fault. It's you don't know what you don't know. But sometimes I think doctors have not ego, but maybe ego. And they don't want to admit that because they do care about people, right? Like, you don't become a medical doctor unless you want to you want to help people. So it's probably a little painful for them as well to think, oh gosh, things that we're trying to do to help might actually be hurting people, and nobody wants to feel that way, right? So it's just so hard.
They've been trained to believe that they are the expert,
right?
Which means they're done learning, and they have been taught that that is the go-to. They have been taught that this is a chronic condition and there's nothing you can do about it except make the patient feel better. And that's their goal, to make the patient feel better.
Yep.
The problem is it's not a cure. And if you hold back, if you put a dam up on the inflammation in your body and you suppress it, it has consequences if you're doing it chronically.
Absolutely.
And they're not seeing that. That's the problem, because they're being taught this is how we make you feel better. So when you tell them, no, this isn't making me feel better, this is making it worse, they're saying, you don't understand, and you're suffering needlessly. I had my doctor and the dermatologist give me a referral for the hyperbaric chamber for healing chronic wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I got up in the middle of that at 8 to be in another town at 8 a.m. Now, I normally couldn't fall asleep until like daybreak because it was so bad. So being in another town by 8 a.m. was like excruciating for me.
Yeah.
And I got there and he came in and I told him what was going on. And he looked at me and he scolded me and said, "This is all your fault."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what? He said, "You are not obeying your doctor's orders." I was like, what are you talking about? He said, "You need steroids, and you refusing to use steroids is what your problem is." I said, "You don't understand."
Oh my gosh.
I was already doubling the dose of steroids. I was already using the most potent creams, and it still wasn't working anymore. This is what's causing it. And I handed him the ITSAN paperwork. And he threw it aside and he said, "I'm not reading that. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not a doctor."
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, he told me it was all my fault. He refused to treat me. He said, "You wasted my time."
Oh my gosh. It's very harsh.
And yes. And I stood up and I looked at him crying my eyes out. And I said, "Please, you've got to start opening your eyes, because I'm not going to be the last one to come in here saying this."
Absolutely. Oh,
but
that breaks my heart.
But what I did find when I was going to stores and sometimes people didn't even seem to notice. And I'm saying to myself, you're talking to me the way I look, and you're not really paying attention to the way I look. And then others would look at me with a, oh, I feel so sorry for you look. So I found that if I carried the It's flyers around with me, instead of feeling like, oh, don't look at me, I could feel like, look at me, I want to raise awareness. And I would hand them the flyer because now I could be proactive. So I was at the grocery store one day and I was flaring pretty bad. And the cashier gave me that look.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this is steroid addiction for my asthma, the steroids from my asthma. I said, it happens for creams too. And I handed her the flyer.
Wonderful.
And when I did, and she looked at it and she went, oh my God, can I keep this? I think that's what my brother is going through.
Oh, that's so great that you did that.
You know how empowering that felt? Now I didn't feel like a creature. Now I felt like a help.
Oh my gosh. First of all, that I have to commend you for that. It's not, first of all, it's not, we both know it is not easy going out in public and braving that. And, you know, when you don't feel, it's not a vanity thing at all. It's a self-confidence, self-worth. I mean, you attach a lot to who you see in the mirror. So when you're suffering physically and also it shows outwardly in your appearance, it is very hard. And people that are not going through this, they really don't understand how horrible that feeling is, how low it can really feel. And when you go out in public, that is I hope everybody that listens to this episode can take that. That is a huge takeaway, to feel empowered, to know like I can be brave and go out there and I can educate people, because that's what this is. It's so many times you feel, you know, your shoulders cave in and you don't want to look people in the eye because you're embarrassed by the way that you look, and it's not your fault. And if you only were able to give someone a couple words or a paper or something, they could know, hey, no, I'm not a diseased creature. You know, I was inflicted with something this wasn't meant for me. This was something that happened to me. And now I'm going to make it happen for me, and I'm going to help, and I'm going to impact people. I think that is so incredible that you did that. That is, I mean, I'm going to start doing that, to be honest. I think that's a great idea.
It was a gift to myself from Itzan. It really was, because when she said that to me, it was like, oh my God, I can have an impact. And that was so precious to me and so uplifting, and it gave me strength to keep going. I ran into my sister at one point, who I hadn't seen in a couple of years, at a restaurant. And I was like, 75% healed at that point. Mm-hmm. So I was still looking pretty bad, but I was able to go to a restaurant. And she saw me and she was like, oh my God, what happened to you? And I said the same thing to her. I was like, actually, this is much better for me to be able to even be here. And I handed her the flyer. And I said, those steroids that I've been on all these years, that's what the cause of this has been. And she was like, wow. You know, and maybe she ran into somebody afterwards who had the same problem and went, you know, hey, maybe this is what the problem is. Because when my daughter had said it, I didn't believe her at first.
Yep.
So it's hard that awareness.
It is hard to believe that. And, you know, it's interesting going back to, you said that doctor is telling you, you know, this is your fault. You didn't listen to your doctors. Well, doctors are incredible for so many things, and we need them. And I'm never going to knock the medical community for life-saving procedures and treatments and surgeries and what have you. But when there again, I'm not trying to make this, it's not like a spiritual thing. It's the reality is we're all humans. Humans don't have all the answers. They're not God. They can't play God. They don't know what they don't know. It's the same thing that I said earlier. Right. So for you to, I mean, just thinking about it, like I had the first time I ever shared on, I think, my Facebook page that this is TSW, this is what I have. I remember so many of my friends saying, oh my gosh, my 2-year-old has eczema and I just put him on steroids, and I did that. And it just gets the conversation started. And that's our job. That's the only thing we can hope to do, is to make a small impact, and it can be a ripple effect, and it can really eventually create the change that we need, so that this awareness is really, it's a common thing. Right. So I'm so proud of you for doing that. And I think that's so amazing. You should be so proud of yourself for, again, being out in public and then sharing that awareness. What would you say? Because you said at the time you saw your sister, you were about 75% healed. Was there a period of time? I want to know two things. What do you think was your lowest point? And then what, like, when did you start to go out in public and kind of face civilization and people? Was there a period of time where you were hibernating and hiding it out, so to speak? Or talk to me about that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. By the end of the first month was when it started getting severe. And then the only places I could go was the doctor's office, and that was only out of desperation. I had a counselor because I had PTSD.
Yeah.
And there were so many times I would have to call her and say, I just can't do it today. I can't get dressed. I can't go. And she would talk to me on the phone through it instead. But for the first 7 months, I couldn't go anywhere. I would watch the seasons out of my living room window go by. I could sit on the back porch wearing my clothes, my sweatshirts, my bathrobe, my coat, and the breeze at 85 degrees was too much for me. I was too cold. I had to go back in the house.
Oh my gosh.
Because you felt like when you get a really bad sunburn, you get really bad chills.
Yep.
And it's to the bone, and it doesn't go away. And my two son-in-laws didn't understand why I couldn't stop scratching.
Yeah, that's
so
the
my
worst.
daughter, right. So my daughter, who explained it to them, the one who had actually found it for me, thank God she did. Her name's Erica. And she said to them, okay, you have 7 layers of skin, right? And they're like, yeah. Okay, you get an itch, it's on the top layer, you scratch it, you've taken care of that itch. Now, what if it's layer number 6?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you can only reach layer number 1. No matter how much you scratch, you're not going to get to that itch. And if you do, you need to go to the hospital.
That's a great explanation. Thank you, Erica.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually asked her before this, I said, what would you like to share to people? And we were talking about the fact that the doctors just don't understand. It's not that they're trying to hurt you, but because we want to get the message that it is an addiction, your body is addicted to it, that by saying you just need more steroids and this is your fault, what they are actually saying is, if you were a heroin addict and you went to the doctor and they said to you, you know what you need, go get some more heroin.
Absolutely.
Because that is precisely what it is.
Amen. That is it. That is exactly it. And I said the same thing to my family when I was trying to, it's really hard to explain to friends, loved ones, family.
Yes.
If you're not in this, or you're not at least even very open-minded to all possibilities in the medical world and in our bodies, like, it is very next to impossible to really explain. And no one really will truly get it unless, you and I, we're in it. We have it, we get it. But it is exactly the same thing. So if you're an alcoholic, if you're addicted to heroin or opioids or whatever it is, it's your body is now craving that. That is a drug that it needs to produce whatever it needs to produce. If you take it away, I mean, I was blown away. Everything you just said about the breeze outside, not being able to regulate your body temperature. I remember the one doctor in California, Dr. Rappaport, who does acknowledge, TSW.
Yeah.
I remember hearing him say that every single thing, pretty much everything that a picture a regular drug addict, what they go through, where other than maybe convulsions or seizures and things like to that extreme, every other symptom, the chills, the insomnia, the night sweats, the unbearable itch, I mean, all of it, we have all of those symptoms. So it's just so sad. It's so sad. And it's debilitating and it's all the things. So you're so lucky and blessed. I mean, that you have a daughter who not only found this for you, but also was like wanting to really combat this and be alongside of you for the journey and help explain that to your other family members. That's huge.
extremely lucky to have a supportive family and friends.
Definitely. And not everybody has that. And that's just, oh my gosh, it's so sad. So sad to me what this can do. It wreaks havoc on your own system, but let alone your relationships or the job loss that people experience are just, it's just so sad. So I'm so glad to have you on the show and like shedding this light. What would you say? I'm curious what you would think out of the whole process. So, you started in 2016. And I think you said to me before this time chatting that you probably flared on and off then until what, 2019, when you would say you were totally healed?
Well, after the first year, I actually thought I had healed. And I went through a period of time where I really believed that. Mm-hmm. And then it flared back again. And I was like, oh my God, no.
How long was it when you thought you were healed? How long was it until that next flare kind of came up? Do you remember?
I think about 7 months.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you were back to normal, quote unquote, for 7 good months. That must have taken a toll on your mental health. I'm sure that was very depressing.
Yes, because I was like, oh, please don't tell me I'm going to be like one of those long timers.
Yeah.
My thought on that, there's keys in there. See, if we can get the doctors to go from denying it and thinking that what they're doing is right to being curious about the symptoms, being curious about, well, why is there some people who heal at 4 months or 6 months, but then there are others who at 7 years are still suffering?
Yep.
And so I've been looking at that as a curiosity point. And I came across something that was about natural herbs that said that these things will drain the lymphatic system of their blockages. So I was like, well, my lymph nodes at one point, at the worst part of it, were swollen.
Yep.
Especially the ones in the pelvic area, like they were big balls.
Yes. Yep. I've had it too.
And my thought was, okay, that's a typical symptom. Is it possible that the ones that are long-term have lymph nodes that are blocked? They can't release the rest of it. So that's why they keep going. So if we got curious, if the doctors could get curious about what are the differences, the blood work, the differences in things like that, from the ones that healed to the ones that didn't, they may find those keys.
Absolutely. To your point, we need to find lots of curious doctors that are not just willing to accept what has been for the last 60, 70, however many years. And that's, and I actually went to, so I'm based outside of Philadelphia. So I went to University of Pennsylvania, is one of the best hospitals all around in the country, really. And I remember seeing an infectious disease doctor and the head of the dermatology. And he was honest with me and said, Jen, I'm sorry to say this, my wife even has eczema. But over the last 60 years, we have made very, very little, if any, advancements in what we know about the skin, which blew my mind because we both know that is the largest organ that we have. So of all the, just because we can see it and the other organs are buried inside of our bodies, we can't see them. We pay little, like that is the bottom of the totem pole as far as the research, the development, what we know. It's almost like the same thing as saying we know more about space than we do our own ocean on this planet, right? It's so similar. It's crazy, right? We have it. We are living on this planet, on this earth, and we know more about what's out there than what's in here. And it's the same thing about our skin. So I agree with you 100%. It's not that we need these doctors to like fight against the doctors that don't want to accept it. It's just getting everybody open-minded to, okay, this is clearly, there's going to be more and more people, like you said, that I'm so glad you said to your doctor, I'm not going to be I'm not the first or the last person that you're going to speak to about this. It's just so true. So I hope we can make a dent and hopefully shake this community up so that they can be more curious about it. What would you say?
Well,
Go ahead.
I think if the ones who do heal, like me, our obligation is to show them that we healed.
Yes.
Because then we change their perspective about, okay, so how is it possible they really don't need steroids the rest of their life?
Right, exactly.
Because that's something they don't see yet. But like I do plan on going back to that head of dermatology and saying, okay, look at me now.
Yep.
COVID started just at the time I was going to do that. And I was like, okay, I'm still high risk, So I'm not going to go where I don't have to go while this is going on.
So I honestly, I'm going to have you back on the show after you do confront him and tell him that, because I'm going to be so curious to know, his reaction. And I think you should do that. It's not like told you so. It's like, hey, just so you're aware, like, look at me now. And my question to you about that, because I share the PTSD as well. Obviously, I don't really think anyone that goes through this can get out of or around having PTSD, because it is so traumatic. But what, going forward, if you have a mosquito bite, if you have anything that would require, naturally you would go to a doctor and here you go, here's the cream. I don't know if you're like me about this, but even over the counter things, I have such a serious nervousness and fear around looking at all the ingredients on every single box, because God forbid there's a hidden like 0.1% steroid in there. It's a fear that this could, like, we could relapse and relive that whole nightmare all over again. And I'm currently in it. Like, I am in the withdrawal process. You're at least past that point, but do you also share that same, fear about, I'm so scared of whatever I put in my body or on my body, because I can't ever handle going through that again?
Honestly, I don't anymore.
Good. That's a relief. That's a relief for me to hear. I'm sure for everyone to hear, because nobody wants to live like that in constant fear, right?
Right. No, I actually have come so far on my PTSD that I even talk about that. I have guest spots on podcasts about that as well.
Wonderful.
Because I'm no longer living in that. But I was already trying before I went through TSW, because at 52 years old, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune that the oldest person in the world lived to the age of 60, past 10. I was 52. So I was like, oh no, at the most, I have 8 years left to live, and that's it.
Oh, geez.
I'm 62 now.
And healthy as a horse, right?
Yes. And my skin is not a problem anymore. I don't have those constant itches. I remember the first day that I went through the morning without itching. And I was like, oh my God, I have an itch today. And that was like at the end of the TSW. And I posted about it on Facebook on the TSW site. I was like, oh my God, I went through the morning without itching. I said, I know it's coming back. That's not, it's not that I'm saying that's it. This is not a linear healing.
Yes.
I want everybody to know that. It's not linear. But there are certain subtle things you can see that you're moving forward. Like, I lost a lot of weight when I went through it. I don't know if you've ever watched the Twilight series.
The Vampire Twilight series?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Yes. Okay. When she changes and she's going through the anguish, but she's under the morphine, so they can't see her anguish. I watched that over and over because it gave me comfort, because that's exactly how I felt inside.
Yeah.
When I spent all those days on the couch watching the different seasons, that's in New Moon, because that's what she did. She watched it from her bedroom.
Yeah. So, I know exactly what part you're talking about. Yeah. And I understand that totally.
I put it on my TV so that I could record the part of her anguish when she was turning, to show my counselor exactly how I felt when I was flaring.
It's just so terrible.
Because the anguish, she is so good at representing the anguish you feel, the anxiety, the panic, the excruciating pain. She displays that perfectly in that scene, because that's how we feel.
Yeah, you're so right. What would you say, was there anything in particular? I mean, you say you lost weight. Now, I know we both know from people in the community that suffer with this, that there's so many things that are talked about, like try this diet, eliminate this, avoid sugar, avoid gluten. You should exercise and sweat. You shouldn't exercise and sweat. There's just so, and what you said about it not being a linear path, it's It's so accurate. And just like there is no such thing as one size fits all for any human being with any kind of medication, with any
Exactly.
disease, with any ailment, it's the same thing here. And it's so frustrating because we are suffering so badly that I think for me too, my therapist has told me this, you're trying so hard to control something that you actually don't have control over. And I think
Right.
that's why a lot of us are trying, oh my gosh, okay, I have to eliminate these foods and then I'm going to feel better. Great, I'll do it. Then when you try that and it doesn't work, you get even more depressed because you're like, what?
Yes.
There's got to be a solution. But at this point in time, it's 2022. Like we don't have nearly any knowledge about this. That's why it is hard,
Right.
but that's why leaning on people and having a support system is so huge. So did you, when you were in your worst stages, is there anything you did or tried or ate or avoided that you noticed kind of helped, or you just kind of bared
For the
through it?
food, no. And what I realized on that was, why should I tell myself I can't eat those strawberries? They're a nightshade and that'll make me flare. Because then you don't eat them and then you flare and you're like, what did I do wrong?
Exactly.
So there's no, time is the only thing that heals it, because your body needs to be able to get rid of the steroids that it has built up in its system.
Yep.
You created a dam holding down that inflammation. So now that you've lifted that dam, it's going to all come out. So your body is fighting a fight to recoup itself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about what foods. Yeah, some can help because then they're giving your body nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
But don't blame yourself on the flares. Do not hate yourself when you've scratched all your progress away, because that is part of it as well.
Yep.
So be kind to yourself. I lost a lot of weight. I looked like her when she was on that movie,
Mm-hmm.
when
Yeah.
she was down to skin and bones.
It's
I
so
couldn't
scary.
look myself in the mirror. But when I started gaining weight back, it didn't dawn on me, wait a minute, that means I'm over the fence. So I started gaining weight back. That was part of it. What I found was helpful for me to track it. You know how when you go to the doctors and they say, well, what's the rating of your pain?
Yes.
Is it a 4? Is it a 6? So I started rating my days. If it was a flare day and it was excruciating, it was a 9. The first couple of months, the first 4 months, the first 6 months, yeah, they were all above 10 plus. They were all 10 plus.
Yep.
I was in complete agony. Then I'd have a day that was a 9 or an 8, and then down to my averages being 6 and 7, and then going back up to an 8 or 9, and then coming back down.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, if I followed my progress that way, I could see, wow, it hasn't been that long. I haven't had a 10 in a long time. But it really sucks when I have an 8. But today's a 6, so I'm going to enjoy the 6.
And so would you write that? So you would track that yourself? You would write that down, or you would keep like a log or a journal of that? Or?
I didn't even actually log it, but I just kept it in my head.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And that's similar to me. Honestly, right now, God, knock on wood, praise God, I'm not having, the last few days have been really, again, very low. And that's what you have to do. Like the mental piece of this is so important, whether you're spiritual or not, as long as you can keep a healthy relationship with yourself and like love yourself through this awful journey. That is what I've noticed. And it's hard to do in the very, very beginning. It is so hard not to get angry at yourself, get angry at your body, get angry at God, get angry at whatever, because none of us deserved this. This isn't something that
I never got angry at God, because my thought was, these are the steroids that we put in it.
Absolutely
these are the steroids that I gave my body.
Yes.
So when I would be at my lowest, well, Epsom salt, Dr. Teal's baths are what really helped me. Bubble bath, hot, not too hot. And I would lay in the tub for an hour, because it would be like my sanity saver. And I would have a whole list, a music playlist that I would listen to during it. And I would stay there until the water got cool and I was starting to get chilly, and then I would get out. And I did that twice a day. But the music playlist, if I was up at 3 a.m, I had to listen to music. I had to. Music was and fight song from
I know
Rachel
that.
Platten.
Yeah, great song.
Blessings by Laura Story.
Love it.
Those were songs. And I would be crying listening to them. And I would want to pray to God to heal me. And then I would think, but there are babies going through this.
Yes.
So
Yep.
I would switch it to them. I didn't want to pray for me because I would literally think, well, they need it more. They need it more than I do. I'm an adult. That's how I felt.
I feel the exact same way. I'm so happy to be able to like talk, everybody is different with their spirituality or their faith, whatever, but I feel the same way. And what I've noticed is in that ITSAN group, when I see pictures that are heartbreaking, whether they're infants, babies, or even women, that their faces are just, they're so sad, and they have it so much worse than I do. I notice when you ask, hey, can I pray for you? As opposed to always saying to God, please help me. Not only does it feel better, but you actually feel like you're helping yourself by helping somebody else. So it just, it's such an amazing feeling. And I'm a musician, so I am with you 100% as far music can be, whether it's, rock and roll, whether it's worship music, whether it is like I love Fight Song. I love that song so much. Music is healing. I mean, it really is, just like prayer is healing, just like, there's so many modalities and things that we can do to aid us through this really painful journey. And I think something important to remember is everybody's got something. Although we feel like going through there can't be anything worse than this. I'm sure there are so many other things, sicknesses, diseases, that other people are feeling that exact same way. And I just think it's important to know and to remind everybody listening to this, and that you're not going to get out of this life alive without something going wrong, without some kind of something stopping you in your tracks, some kind of lesson that you're supposed to learn, which kind of leads me to my last kind of question that I had for you, what would you say, any lessons that you learned during that whole process? And then what advice would you give to somebody that's currently going through it?
The lessons to me were, number one, you're so much stronger than you ever knew. Because each and every single day that you get to the evening after having struggled all day long, you can tell yourself, I took this fight through one more day.
Love that.
Because you really did. Because you can always go back to the steroids and it's a temporary fix. But you chose that day to instead suffer in the agony along with your body to say, no, I can't do that anymore. To go to a doctor and say, no, I'm not taking that prescription. No, I'm not taking more steroids. You are telling your body, you mean more to me than a quick fix. So you are stronger than you even realized.
I absolutely love that.
Suppressing the immune system chronically has consequences. If it's not a cure, it will have its own effects. So you got to find out what the why is behind an ailment.
Huge, right? You don't want to put a Band-Aid on a broken bone, and that's what a lot of medical professionals. And again, not blaming them, not coming at them. They only know what they know, and they are taught. We go seek doctors' help, and a lot of the times, like you said earlier, their job is, let me help my patient is suffering and they're not feeling well. How can I give them the quickest result possible that's going to relieve their pain, their suffering? And so, my mother took me as a 2-year-old, and I put myself in her shoes and all these parents' shoes, and you're a mother too. So when you see your child suffering, what do you want to do? You want to take that pain immediately away from them, and you don't stop sometimes to question, is this safe? Is this correct? Is this the only way to do this? You listen to the person who's most knowledgeable and who you trust. And then here we are, unfortunately, the small percent, or I don't even know exactly the percentage. I think last time I checked, it was like 15 to 20% of people get inflicted with this steroid addiction. They have to go through this withdrawal, which is a big enough number to be very concerned and raise the eyebrows and alert the medical communities to it. But it's just really,
it's probably way bigger than that.
I bet you it is.
People probably don't realize that's what they have.
That's exactly what I thought too. And I'm sure you're probably right. I think that's true. And I love that you're saying that you're stronger than you think, because that thought kind of came to me at the end of month 1 or 2 for me. And I just thought, you know what, like there are people, I mean, there are people that really want to end their life over this. There are people that I'm sure have ended their life over this. There are people that are so depressed that they're in such a hole and such a bad place, but every one of us needs to remember, like, you chose to do the hard thing. You didn't take the easy way out, and this is going to
a warrior.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you said we are strong, I mean, we are capable of enduring so much. And I think that thought alone is just so mind blowing, that we are not as fragile as we think. We are really, really strong. So I love that. And then that was the lessons. What advice, I guess it's probably along the same lines, but if somebody that's currently feeling at their lowest, they're at rock bottom with this right now, what advice would you give them?
Well, for some people, it only takes a few months. For others, it takes years. But never focus on the possibility that it could take you years, because it will undermine your efforts. And there's a possibility for each and every person that they're getting over that fence could be right around the corner. When I was 4 months and suffering really bad, my mindset was, maybe I'll be one of the lucky ones. And when I hit 6 months, I will heal. And then at 6 months, when I wasn't healed, maybe I'll be not on the real lucky, but by 8 months, I'll heal. At
That's
8
great.
months when I was still suffering, I thought at a year. Well, a year is the average. So I guess I'm just going to be like an average one. So I always saw it as it's close. And you always have to think that way, because it's very possible that next week you'll be saying, wow, I'm glad I didn't give up. It's possible for every single one.
I absolutely love that. And you know what? Even if you are someone that takes years, this is a fraction of your life. You still have so much more life, no matter how old you are, no matter what you're going through. It's at the end of the day, like I said to you before we jumped on here, it's not a death sentence, and we have so much more power than we realize. And that's taken me a very long time to get to that place. And, you know, I'm really glad that you imparted those words of wisdom, because I caught myself in the first month or 2 months, even 3 months. I mean, I'm only in like month 4 at this time right now. I caught myself thinking, when people would ask, you know, how are you doing? I would say, oh, I have such a long road ahead of me. And then I thought, why would I speak that into existence? Why am I choosing those words? Right? Because exactly like you said, God, I don't know how long this will take me. And why would you not? It's like, doesn't it feel better inside to be hopeful and to think that you're going to be one of those lucky ones, rather than to project? I'm basically speaking, you know, words become things. I really very strongly believe that. And so you have to be absolutely. You have to be so careful with what you're speaking into the existence and what you're telling yourself in your mind. Like, that matters. So as low as it gets, just to breathe through it and say, tomorrow's another day. If I had a bad day today, I can wake up tomorrow and choose to try my absolute hardest to put a smile on my face and know that I'm one day closer to the finish line. I am one day closer to being done with this.
And the rebirth feeling when you're all the way over it is as much agony as you were in, as much pain as you felt. It is totally the opposite. The joy is just as intense when you get done with it as it was intense on the suffering.
Oh, that makes me excited. I'm smiling ear to ear right now thinking of that.
It does. It blows your mind at how intense, because it's a whole new life. I don't worry about my skin anymore. And that's
huge.
Mind-blowing.
Do you think, I said last question already, but when you said, you know, when you get to that point and the joy is overwhelming, I'm curious, like, what did it take for you to finally realize that you're officially completely healed? Because like you said, sometimes you think you are, and then a flare up will happen. And I think for most of us, even if they are a lucky one, quote unquote, 4 or 6 months, whatever it is, it's probable that there could be a flare that would come up again. But at what point do you sit there and go, okay, it's been like 4 months and I've had no symptoms of this awful TSW. I think I'm finally officially healed. When did you kind of know that I'm out of the woods, I'm done? Like, when did that hit you?
I think it's more when your body feels like you don't feel any inflammation in your body at all. Because before that, there's always that little itch under, that little mild, even if the itch is real mild, you can feel that there's a little bit of inflammation in there. And I think unless you actually have been through it, that's hard to understand. But when you get to the other side, you feel there's no more inflammation. You can feel it, like your skin actually feels normal, and having to reach for a bottle of lotion is not something you worry about anymore. And that just, when you realize
that's making me smile. I hope everybody listening to this is getting filled with so much hope, because this call has been so amazing and you've given me so much hope. And I am just so grateful that you were on the show as one of the very first interviews of it. And I can't thank you enough. And I thank you for being a voice. I really want to thank you for walking around with those papers and spreading awareness, because that's all that we can do here. We can just continue to try to spread the word and get more people acknowledging this and more people aware of this, so that hopefully we can avoid lots more babies in the future whose parents are a little bit more questioning, instead of just blind faith and blind trust in whatever anyone suggests that they do. It can be, kids with eczema, psoriasis, any kind of skin issue. There's a more natural way to do it that's not going to wreak havoc on your system, which steroids are scary. They can be life-changing, but they can also be very scary, and we're proof of that. So I am so grateful for you to be on here.
Eczema is not a disease of its own. Eczema is a symptom of an allergy. And they treat it as though it was its own disease and that steroids are the cure. If you find out what the allergy is, that is a lot of work sometimes, but sometimes you outgrow it too. And I stay on the support groups, even though I've healed, simply to give others the hope that I got when I was in the thick of it.
And you know what? I got to say thank you for that as well, because there are many people that, because of the PTSD, because of what it triggers in their mind, a very dark time for them. And there's no shame in this. If you are somebody that is listening to this and you have healed and you can't stand seeing the pictures because it brings up really traumatic memories for you, that's fine. But I can speak for everybody that's currently going through it to thank you, because all you have when you're going through it and it's so dark is hope. And when you hear stories like yourself and other people, it makes it that much easier for you to hang on another day and to get through this. So I want to thank Erica for finding that for you and for sharing everything she knew with you, so that now you can go and impact other people. And thank you so much for being on the show and taking the time out of your morning to be on here. So grateful. If there's any last minute things you want to share with anyone, go for it. And I just want to thank you again.
Just hang on to hope. Keep your eyes open on the fact that you are a warrior. Give yourself the credit for being a warrior. Be kind to yourself. What works for one doesn't always work for another. Do what you feel is best for you. Follow your gut on that. And if today was a bad day, there's always tomorrow. And tomorrow could be better. And next week could be your sunshine. So always hold on. Just hold on.
Melody, you rock. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a
It was an honor.
Beautiful day. Thank you so much.